The Great Smoky Mountains were supposed to be America's national park for everyone. Free admission, open roads, a family tradition stretching back to 1934. Today, the Smokies draw more visitors than Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon combined, yet the very success that built this tradition is now driving people away. Hours-long traffic at Cades Cove, cabin prices shutting out the families who made this place what it is. Wildlife altered by constant human contact. A park losing its quiet to the crowds who came searching for it. How did America's most beloved mountain getaway become a destination that's harder to enjoy with every passing year? That answer begins with a promise made 90 years ago. In 1934, Congress established the Great Smoky Mountains National Park as a sanctuary for ordinary Americans. From the beginning, the park was shaped by a radical promise: no entrance fee, ever. Tennessee and North Carolina, the states that assembled the land, insisted that these mountains would remain open to all, not just those who could afford a ticket. This single decision set the Smokies apart from every other major national park in the country. Families from across the eastern United States found a rare kind of freedom here. The park's winding roads, Newfound Gap, Cades Cove, the Little River, invited drivers to stop when they pleased, picnic by a stream, or wander into the woods without worrying about their budgets. Waterfalls, wildflowers, and black bears became part of a shared family memory passed down through generations. The tradition didn't require expensive gear or elaborate planning. It was about packing the car, heading for the mountains, and finding escape in the open air. As the years went by, the gateway towns of Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and Sevierville grew up around this steady flow of visitors. Small motels, pancake houses, and souvenir shops lined the roads, offering simple comforts to travelers who came for the park, not for spectacle. The Smokies' identity, affordable, accessible, shaped by the rhythms of family road trips, became its greatest strength. The park's openness wasn't just a policy, it was a promise that these mountains belonged to everyone, not just the privileged few. By the late 20th century, the Smokies' reputation as an open, affordable retreat had become the driving force behind a regional economic transformation. As more families made the journey each year, the gateway towns began to expand with them. Gatlinburg, once a quiet mountain outpost, saw its population multiply and its downtown fill with motels, pancake houses, and souvenir stands. Pigeon Forge evolved from a rural valley into a 10-mile corridor of hotels, outlet malls, and dinner theaters. In Sevierville, new attractions and sprawling cabin developments took root, each promising a slice of mountain escape. The numbers tell the story. By 2023, the park drew over 13 million visits, more than Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon combined. This steady stream of travelers fueled a boom that turned the entire region into an engine for tourism. Lodging options exploded from rustic cabins to mega resorts. Entertainment districts sprang up, offering everything from amusement rides to music shows. The opening of Dollywood in 1986 signaled that the Smokies were no longer just a seasonal nature retreat, but a year-round destination for families from across the country. Over time, these mountain towns built their identities around visitor traffic. Local economies shifted to depend on tourism, not just for jobs, but for their very survival. The growth fed on itself. More visitors brought more development, which in turn attracted even larger crowds. The Smokies' original promise, open to all, became the foundation for a tourism corridor unlike any other in the United States, setting the stage for the pressures and choices that would follow. Numbers alone tell the story. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park now draws over 13 million visitors each year, more than Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon combined. This is not just a record, it's a scale that no other national park in America matches. Popular overlooks, once places for a quiet sunrise or a family photo, are now full from morning until dusk, with cars circling for a spot that may never open. Parking lots at trailheads like Alum Cave and Laurel Falls fill to capacity before breakfast on peak days. By mid-morning, lines of vehicles snake along the roads, and visitors measure their progress in feet, not miles. At Cades Cove, the loop road can see up to 60,000 visitors on a busy weekend, with wait times stretching for hours. The park's most iconic drives, Newfound Gap and Clingman's Dome, are no longer escapes but managed corridors, where the simple act of pulling over to admire the view becomes a test of patience. The bottleneck is not at the entrance gate, but at every scenic pullout, every picnic area, every narrow mountain road. The Smoky's greatest asset, open access to anyone with a car, has become its greatest strain. Visitors arrive expecting the freedom of the open road and find themselves funneled into a system that is constantly at its limit. The experience that once felt spontaneous now unfolds within the boundaries of crowd management and capacity charts. In the modern Smokies, the park itself is the choke point, reshaping what it means to seek out America's mountain sanctuary. Traffic has become the Smokies' most reliable companion. From the first glimpse of Gatlinburg's parkway, brake lights stretch in every direction. The road into Pigeon Forge, once a rural highway, now swells with lines of minivans and SUVs, inching past rows of hotels and pancake houses. In Cherokee, the gateway on the park's southern edge, the story is the same. Cars stack up at the entrance, idling as families wait for their turn to escape into the mountains. Inside the park, mobility is dictated by the clock and the calendar. On a summer weekend, the 11-mile loop at Cades Cove can trap drivers for hours. National Park Service data show that up to 60,000 people may attempt the loop on a busy weekend, transforming a scenic drive into a test of patience. Newfound Gap Road, the main artery between Tennessee and North Carolina, routinely backs up for miles during peak foliage season or holiday weekends. A drive that should take 30 minutes can stretch to 2 hours or more, with little relief even at the highest elevations. These jams don't just clog the famous roads, they spill into every corner of the region. Side streets in Sevierville and Gatlinburg become overflow lanes. Emergency vehicles and shuttle buses crawl through the same bottlenecks. Parking lots at trailheads fill before breakfast, and any hope of a spontaneous stop is replaced by the reality of circling for a space that may never open. In today's Smokies, traffic is no longer an occasional inconvenience. It is woven into the rhythm of the visit, dictating when and how the mountains can be enjoyed, and reminding everyone that the freedom of the open road is now measured in minutes lost to gridlock. A Smoky Mountains trip still sits on the calendar for millions of American families, but the price tag has changed in ways that quietly redraw the limits of tradition. The park itself remains free to enter, yet the surrounding vacation has grown far more expensive than it once was. The biggest shift is in lodging. Nightly cabin rates now range from $120 for the smallest units to well over $1,500 for large family lodges during peak weeks. In Sevier County, the average daily rate for short-term rentals has nearly doubled since 2015, and occupancy still hovers above 50%. Hotel rooms, once a budget-friendly staple, now surge in price during fall foliage and summer, with Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge posting near 100% occupancy and rates that climb as much as 60% above off-season levels. But the pressure doesn't end at the front desk. Restaurant meals, attraction tickets, and entertainment costs have all climbed alongside lodging. A pancake breakfast or a family dinner out now adds up quickly, and a day's worth of mini golf, aquarium visits, or amusement rides can rival the cost of a hotel night. Even parking tags, introduced to help fund park services, add a new line to the vacation budget. The result is a trip that once felt spontaneous, pack the car, find a room, explore, now requires careful planning and saving, especially for families watching every dollar. The Smokies are still reachable by highway, but for many, they're becoming harder to reach in the household budget. The affordable road trip tradition hasn't disappeared, but it runs up against a new reality. Open roads and open spaces, but fewer open options for the casual, spur-of-the-moment getaway. Vacation rentals have redrawn the map of who gets to call the Smokies home. Over the past decade, single-family houses and cabins that once anchored year-round neighborhoods in Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and Sevierville have been swept into the short-term rental market. In June 2026, Pigeon Forge alone listed over 4,200 active Airbnb and Vrbo rentals, each earning an average of $43,000 a year. Sevierville's average daily rate for a vacation rental now hovers near $390, with occupancy rates strong enough to keep the conversion pipeline running. For property owners and investors, the math is simple. A two-bedroom cabin can bring in $68,000 or more annually as a short-term rental, far outpacing what a local family could pay to stay year-round. But for the people who keep the region's schools, restaurants, and fire stations running, the results are stark. Median home prices have soared into the millions, and the supply of affordable long-term rentals has shrunk to a fraction of what it once was. Teachers, nurses, and park staff find themselves pushed farther out, commuting from distant counties or relying on employer-provided housing if they can get it. Neighborhoods that once echoed with the routines of daily life now sit dark for much of the year, waiting for the next wave of weekend guests. Stories of displacement, families leaving after decades, workers forced out by rising rents have become part of the local conversation, even if the names change from season to season. As vacation rentals multiply, the region's identity shifts. Housing is no longer just a foundation for community, it's a commodity tied to the rhythms of tourism. The same visitor economy that fills hotels and restaurants is making it harder for the people who serve those guests to stay. In the Smokies, the story of access and affordability now runs both ways: who can come for a week and who can afford to stay for a lifetime. The Gateway Corridor into the Smokies has become its own destination, a 10-mile stretch where the mountains themselves sometimes feel like a backdrop to something bigger and louder. In Pigeon Forge, what began as a rural valley is now one of the largest tourism corridors in the country, lined with hotels, outlet malls, go-kart tracks, and the unmistakable presence of Dollywood. The race to outdo the last attraction is constant. New dinner shows, indoor water parks, and ever larger entertainment complexes compete for attention and dollars. Giant LED signs flash promises of adventure, and the skyline is dotted with Ferris wheels and roller coasters instead of church steeples or old barns. What was once a string of family-run motels and pancake houses has become a carefully engineered visitor experience. The commercial strip itself is now part of the mountain story, an identity built on spectacle and scale. For some, this is progress: jobs, tax revenue, and a year-round economy that lifts the region out of its agricultural past. For others, the sense of place has faded. Visitor surveys increasingly mention the loss of an authentic mountain atmosphere, replaced by a version of the Smokies designed to be consumed as entertainment. The debate over what counts as a true mountain experience has only grown more intense. Preservation and commercial growth no longer sit comfortably side by side. The region now sells more than scenery. It sells a curated idea of escape packaged and promoted along a corridor that never sleeps. The question is no longer just how many people the mountains can hold, but what kind of place they are becoming in the process. Black bears have always been the Smokies' most iconic residents, a living emblem on park signs, t-shirts, and postcards. But the story of the bears is also a warning about what happens when wild animals and millions of people cross paths day after day. Encounters are no longer rare. In the warm months, bears wander through campgrounds and picnic areas, drawn by the scent of food left behind in coolers, trash cans, and even unattended backpacks. The National Park Service warns visitors to stay at least 50 yards away, but every summer rangers respond to dozens of close calls and illegal approaches, many of them shared widely on social media. Over time, the bears have learned that where people gather, food often follows. This shift in behavior isn't just about hunger, it's about survival in a landscape shaped by human habits. Bears that grow too comfortable around people can become aggressive or dependent, leading to dangerous situations for both wildlife and visitors. Since 2010, the park has had to relocate or euthanize multiple bears that became habituated to human food, a step that is always a last resort. Dogs too play a role, with most incidents involving pets brought illegally onto trails. Each incident puts park managers in a difficult position. Their job is to protect both the animals and the people, but the sheer volume of visitors makes traditional wildlife management almost impossible. The real challenge is behavioral, teaching millions of guests year after year to pack out trash, secure food, and resist the urge to treat wild bears as roadside attractions. In the Smokies, the fate of the bears is now inseparable from the choices made by everyone who comes to enjoy the mountains. The Smokies' natural beauty has always been its greatest draw, But the physical landscape now bears the imprint of millions of footsteps and tires each year. Trails that once wound quietly through dense forest are worn into broad, eroded paths, their edges crumbling away as hikers search for solid footing. The National Park Service reports soil erosion and vegetation loss along popular routes like Alum Cave and Chimney Tops, with some sections requiring repeated restoration just to hold the line against further damage. The backlog for trail repairs and deferred maintenance now stands at $254 million, a figure that grows as visitor numbers climb. Beyond the trails, the forests themselves are under siege, from pressures less visible to the casual visitor. Invasive species, including the hemlock woolly adelgid and emerald ash borer, have swept through the park, killing off entire stands of native trees. The loss of eastern hemlocks has reshaped stream corridors and reduced habitat for countless species. Balsam woolly adelgid attacks the high-elevation Fraser firs, leaving once green ridges dotted with standing gray skeletons. Park biologists deploy chemical treatments and release predatory beetles in a race to slow the damage, but the scale of infestation outpaces current efforts. Even the AIR has changed. Regional haze from coal-fired power plants and vehicle emissions drifts into the valleys, dimming the famous Blue Ridges and shrinking views that once stretched 100 miles. On the worst days, visibility drops below 5 miles, and the air quality index climbs into levels that pose risks for sensitive visitors. Acid rain and ozone stress further weaken trees and acidify mountain streams, compounding the toll on the ecosystem. The Smokies remain a place of wonder, but the land itself now carries the weight of its popularity, with each season adding to a quiet, cumulative strain. Weather in the Smokies has never been just a backdrop. In the past, a cold snap might bring morning mist to the valleys, or a summer storm would pass through, clearing the air for a few hours. Now the patterns themselves are changing. Scientists tracking the park's climate have recorded a minor cooling of about 0.4 degrees Celsius over the last century, but the real story lies in the swings. Wet years are getting wetter, dry spells are more pronounced, and storms arrive with less warning and greater force. These shifts are not theoretical. Flooding from severe storms has damaged roads and washed out trails, sometimes closing popular routes for weeks. In 2024, a single flash flood wiped out 2 bridges near Deep Creek, cutting off access to several backcountry campsites. Each repair stretches already thin maintenance budgets, while the unpredictability of the weather makes planning harder for both park staff and visitors. Longer, warmer growing seasons are also reshaping the forest itself. Invasive insects like the hemlock woolly adelgid now survive winters that once kept them at bay, accelerating the die-off of eastern hemlocks and Fraser firs. These trees anchor stream corridors and high ridges, supporting salamanders, birds, and hundreds of other species. As the balance tips, entire ecosystems shift with it, sometimes in ways that can't be reversed. The Smokies remain one of the most biodiverse places in North America, with over 19,000 documented species. For biologists and climate researchers, the park has become a living laboratory, an ever-changing test case for how mountain ecosystems respond to a warming, less predictable world. Monitoring stations track rainfall, temperature, and species migrations, but the landscape they study is no longer stable. In the Smokies, climate is now part of the daily operating reality, shaping the future as much as any policy or visitor trend. A walk along the Smokies' most celebrated trails now brings a different kind of memory, where once the hush of wind in the trees or the distant call of a wood thrush marked the rhythm of a day, the air is filled with voices, camera shutters, and the steady shuffle of feet. Sunrise at Clingman's Dome, or sunset at Morton Overlook, once private rituals for early risers or patient families, now unfold before crowds that rival city festivals. The famous overlooks, designed for a handful of cars, brim with visitors from dawn to dusk, each hoping for a moment of quiet that rarely comes. Social media has rewired the map of the Smokies. Instagram geotags and TikTok travel clips have transformed a handful of scenic spots into pilgrimage sites. Alum Cave, Chimney Tops, and Rainbow Falls, places that once offered a sense of discovery, now draw lines of hikers, each waiting for their turn at the perfect photo. The The park's own surveys reflect this shift. More than 30% of visitors now say they rarely or never find a quiet stretch of trail. For many, the idea of solitude has become a memory, not an expectation. Families who return year after year notice the difference most. The quiet that once defined the Smokies, room to wander, space to think, the chance to feel alone in a vast landscape, has become something rare. Even on days when the mountains are as beautiful as ever, the feeling that drew generations here is harder to find. The landscape endures, but the quiet that made it special is slipping away, replaced by a new kind of crowd-powered energy. In the modern Smokies, silence is no longer free for the taking. It is something to be searched for, and increasingly, something to be missed. Every October, the Smoky Mountains reach their breaking point. Autumn's colors ignite the hillsides, drawing a surge of visitors that no other season rivals. The spectacle is brief, just a few weeks when red maples and sugar maples turn the ridges into a patchwork of fire and gold. In those days, demand for the park's beauty outpaces everything else. Hotel rooms in Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge sell out months ahead, and nightly rates soar to their highest levels of the year. Parking lots at trailheads and scenic overlooks fill before sunrise, leaving late arrivals to circle endlessly or turn back. On Newfound Gap Road, traffic slows to a crawl, and a drive that should take half an hour can stretch to 2 hours or more. The park's infrastructure, roads, restrooms, pullouts, hits its limits all at once. For many, the promise of a quiet mountain escape gives way to the reality of gridlock and packed overlooks. The very beauty that has defined the Smokies for generations becomes the force that exposes every weakness, making the fall color rush the clearest window into the pressures facing America's most beloved park. On November 28, 2016, hurricane-force winds drove a wall of fire down from the chimney tops into Gatlinburg and the surrounding valleys. By dawn, nearly 2,500 homes and businesses had been lost, entire neighborhoods reduced to ash, and 14 lives cut short. Over 14,000 people, residents and tourists alike, were forced to flee through smoke and darkness, some with only minutes to spare. The images from that night, flames leaping above the parkway, families huddled in shelters, the blackened skeletons of cabins, shocked the nation and shattered the sense that these mountains were untouchable. For those who lived through it, the wildfire was more than a disaster. It exposed how vulnerable the region had become. Emergency systems failed under the strain. Power outages crippled communication just as the fire changed direction. The mountains that had promised escape and safety became, in a single night, a landscape of danger. Survivors recall the fear, the confusion, the frantic search for missing loved ones, stories that still echo in community gatherings and local news years later. The scars left behind were not only physical. The fire forced a reckoning with the risks of building, visiting, and living in the Smokies. Suddenly, fire safety was no longer an afterthought. It became part of the public conversation, a policy issue, and a quiet source of anxiety for every family who calls the mountains home or dreams of returning. The memory of 2016 lingers, a reminder that even America's most visited park is not immune to catastrophe. The machinery that keeps the Smoky Mountains running was never built for this level of demand. Each year, more than 12 million visitors rely on a network of roads, trails, restrooms, and rangers, a system that now shows its age in every cracked pavement and crowded parking lot. The park's deferred maintenance backlog has climbed to $254 million, a figure that grows as more feet hit the trails and more vehicles circle for a place to stop. Federal funding and parking tag revenue offer some relief, but they lag far behind what's needed to repair eroded paths or restore failing restrooms. Staffing has not kept pace either. Since 2010, the park has lost nearly a quarter of its workforce, leaving fewer hands to manage overflowing trash, emergency calls, and the constant churn of visitors. Inside the park, the debate over parking reservations and shuttle systems has moved from theory to necessity. On busy days, simple solutions no longer work. Managers face hard choices, limit access to protect resources, or risk letting the park's core experience erode further. Proposals for timed entry at Cades Cove or expanded shuttle routes stir controversy, especially among local businesses who fear any restriction could dampen tourism. Yet without new tools, the park's promise of open access becomes harder to keep. The question now is not whether there is a problem, but what options remain when a beloved park is already stretched to its limits. Preservation in the Smokies is not just a matter of nostalgia. Across the region, communities and organizations are working to defend the park's future with purpose and urgency. Conservation groups like Friends of the Smokies and the National Parks Conservation Association fund trail restoration, wildlife monitoring, and invasive species control, efforts that go beyond patching up the past. Museums and craft centers keep the region's mountain culture alive, teaching blacksmithing, weaving, and storytelling to new generations. So heritage remains a living asset, not just a souvenir for visitors to take home. Sustainable tourism has become more than a slogan. Local campaigns encourage visitors to practice leave no trace and to explore quieter corners of the park, easing pressure on the busiest trails and overlooks. Businesses in Townsend, Cosby, and Bryson City are steering travelers toward lesser-known hikes, historic sites, and cultural events, spreading the benefits of tourism while protecting the fragile core of the park. Small outfitters and guides now offer experiences that highlight the Smokies' biodiversity and history, inviting guests to see beyond the main corridors. This is not a passive response to change. It is an active, ongoing effort to ensure that the Smokies remain a place where both nature and tradition have room to breathe, even as the challenges mount. In spite of every challenge, the Smokies still call to millions each year. The park remains one of America's most accessible wild places, sitting within a day's drive of half the United States population. No entrance fee stands in the way, and the promise of mountain air and open horizons is as real as ever. For many families, the journey to these ridges is not just a vacation, but a ritual. Children learning to spot wildflowers, grandparents pointing out old family picnic spots, parents seeking the same quiet they remember from their own youth. These mountains hold a rare continuity, a thread tying generations together through shared memory and annual return. Even as costs rise and crowds thicken, the core experience endures for those who seek it. The Blue Ridges still roll away toward the horizon. Water tumbles over mossy rocks, and the morning mist lingers in the valleys. More than 19,000 species, birds, salamanders, wildflowers still find refuge here, making the park a living museum of Appalachian biodiversity. For local economies, tourism remains essential, supporting tens of thousands of jobs and shaping the identity of every gateway town. The Smokies persist as both a sanctuary and a crossroads, their appeal undiminished even as the pressures mount. The enduring question is not whether the park is loved, but how that love can be sustained without losing what makes these mountains matter. The Smoky Mountains now stand as a mirror for the entire national park system, revealing the challenge of balancing open access with the limits of a fragile landscape. What began as a promise of free entry and family tradition has become a test case for how much a beloved place can absorb before its character is changed. The struggle here is no longer just regional. It is a national question: how to keep wild places open to all, even as crowds and costs rise, and the pressures on land, wildlife, and local communities intensify. Future visitors will not inherit the same Smokies their parents and grandparents knew. The scenery may remain: blue ridges, tumbling streams, the hush of early morning fog, but the experience is shifting. The quiet that once defined these mountains is harder to find. The sense of escape is measured in minutes, not miles. For families, the journey may require more planning, more saving, and a willingness to share the view with thousands of others. No easy answer resolves the tension between preservation and popularity. The Smokies' future will depend on choices made by park managers, local leaders, and millions of visitors who return year after year. Whether this place can remain both protected and accessible, still a sanctuary for the many, not just the few, remains an open question, echoing far beyond these ridges. Today, the Smokies stand at a crossroads where tradition meets transformation. As record crowds strain trails and towns, the promise of free, open access collides with the reality of rising barriers. Preservation now demands choices as urgent as the pressures themselves. For future generations, whether these mountains remain a sanctuary or become a memory depends on the balance we strike between loving a place and loving it wisely. What would you fight to protect? Let us know below.